Lesson 10.1 is on angles. I can name and classify angles. Here's some vocabulary that you should already know from elementary school. Make sure to pause the video and put these in your notes. Anything you're not sure of, make sure you know not just what the name is, but how to write it. Alright, so today we're focusing on angles. An angle is two rays that come together at a common endpoint. So notice here's a ray, here's a ray, here's their common endpoint. We call the common endpoint a vertex. If there's more than one, we call them vertices. Another name for that is like a corner. And you write an angle with this little symbol that means angle. There's 4 ways that we can name an angle if it is labeled correctly. So this one has 3 letters that are used to label it and a number. If it has all of those parts, then we can name it in 4 ways. We can name it angle, L, M, N. Notice how I traced along that line and it made the angle when I used that order. I could call it angle N, M, L. N, M, L. I could also call it angle M or angle 3. A lot of people will try and name it with any 3 letters, but if you notice if I said angle M, L, N, then my corner is ending up over here and I'm talking about a completely different angle. So that's not even a possibility. So only the ones that are listed here are ones that are correct. Pause the video and try giving this angle 4 names. Okay, you should have come up with angle DHV, angle VHD, angle H, and angle 2. Notice how the H is in the middle on both of these, and the H is here. The H should be there. That's your vertex. It should always be part of it, unless you're naming it by the number. Here's some more vocabulary that you should already know. Intersecting lines are lines that cross. Parallel lines are lines that never cross, so they're like train tracks. This is the symbol. I want you to know that. Skew lines. Skew lines are kind of tricky. They're in 2 different planes, so think about a 3-dimensional thing. For example, if you trace the line of this back leg of the chair and trace the seat, those 2 lines would actually never really cross in real life because one's in front of the other one, and so they're not intersecting. They're skew because they're on different planes. They're in front of or behind each other. And then a perpendicular line is lines that come together at a 90-degree angle. It looks like a T. All right, in your notes, there are 3 different kinds of angles. There's acute angles, obtuse angles, and right angles. You probably remember these from elementary school. Acute, I remember, oh, they're so acute, they're so cute. They're the smallest ones. They are less than 90 degrees. Okay, so from 0 to 90 degrees. Obtuse are more than 90 degrees, and in fact, they are between 90 and 179 degrees, I should say. That says 179. And right is exactly 90 degrees. There's one more that's not on here, and that's straight. You do need to know what a straight angle is, and that is where your vertex is in the middle, but it doesn't look like there's any corner to it at all because it forms a straight line, and that's exactly 180 degrees. If you have something bigger than 180, we call it a reflex angle, but you don't actually need to know that. All right, so if we were looking at all of these, acute, remember, means less than 90, straight is equal to 180, right is exactly 90. We use this little symbol to show a right angle. Obtuse is more than 90 degrees. All right, so let's label some of these. If I'm looking at this one's kind of tricky, this one here. But it is more than 90 degrees if you put a corner of a piece of paper in there, so we call that one obtuse. Why don't you pause the video and see which ones you can come up with. All right, so these are what I have. Acute, right, straight, acute, obtuse, right, acute, obtuse, right, and acute. For it to be a right angle, it does not have to have this symbol in the corner, but in some way it should say that it is 90 degrees so that you know for sure. All right, so now we're not only going to name this angle in 4 ways, but we're also going to classify it. Classify is just another word to say name it. So we're going to name it in 4 ways, and then we're going to name it as acute, right, obtuse, or straight. You have like 6 of these to do in your homework today, so make sure you understand how to do that. All right, so I could call it angle MTR, angle RTM, angle T, angle 4, and it looks like it's more than 90 degrees, so we're going to call it obtuse. All right, there's different kinds of angle pairs. So when you have more than one angle come together, there's ways that you can describe that. One of the kinds of angle pairs is a vertical angle pair. So if I'm looking at vertical angles, see where these girls are standing? Those are vertical. They're across from each other. So you should have some notes on this. Angles that are across from each other, and they are congruent. Congruent means that they are the same size. So this angle here would measure the same as this angle there. So if I told you that this angle up here was 100 degrees, you would tell me that this angle down here was 100 degrees. So vertical angles can be here and here across from each other, or here and here across from each other, as long as they aren't exactly opposite and they're equal. So sometimes you'll see multiple angles come together, and if you see that, you're going to notice that we've got some angles like here and here that are across from each other, but they are not vertical angles because they are not equal to each other. Here's some adjacent angles. Adjacent angles mean that they are next to each other. So adjacent means next to. They share a common ray. So notice in the middle here, that is shared by both angles. So here's an angle, B, and here's an angle, A, and they both share this line in the middle. So adjacent angles are angles that are next to each other. All right, so let's try and identify these. It says classify again. Remember, classify means to give it a name. So I want to see angle 1 and angle 3. Those are across from each other. Remember, across from each other means that they are vertical. 6 and 7. 6 and 7 are next to each other. Those would be adjacent. 8 and 1. 8 and 1. Well, those are not across from each other. They're not next to each other, so they're going to be neither one of those things. Okay, let's look at angle ABC. ABC. For that angle and angle FBE, those look like they're kind of across from each other, but you notice those are not the same size angle, and so they are neither. Let's do some green here. Okay, angle FBA. FBA. Okay, and angle FBE. FBE. Those angles share that common ray, so those are adjacent because they are next to each other. And lastly, angle CBD. CBD. And angle ABE. ABE. Those are across from each other. Do they look equal? They sure do. Even though we've got this line coming through the middle, the outside, if we measured that part and this part, those look equal. So those are vertical angles. All right. Have a good night.